This is the final team-by-team show of the season. Really genuinely appreciate everyone who watched or listened to these team-by-team shows all season. We put a ton of work into getting ready for them. Ton of fun for us to do them. Hopefully you guys got some value out of it. Anyways, let's start with the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, it was just so fitting. Given the way the season has gone, given the impact Saquon Barkley has had this season, it was just so fitting. Very first play from scrimmage for the Eagles in this game. Literally play one. Saquon goes 60 yards for a touchdown, breaks a few tackles. But honestly, I don't really think Saquon is why the Eagles won this game. You know, after that 60-yard run that he had on the first play from scrimmage, Saquon Barkley only had 14 carries for 58 yards. The difference was turnovers. I mean, De'Ami Brown had a terrible fumble. Jeremy McNichols fumbled a kickoff. Austin Eckler fumbled. They had a late hit out of bounds that was really bad. Jaden threw an interception. Meanwhile, 0 turnovers for the Philadelphia Eagles, who played basically mistake-free football. Evan, what do you think of Eagles' performance in the NFC Championship game against the Commanders?
Yeah, and mistake-free football is what helped get the Commanders to this spot in the first place, because they were mistake-free against Detroit, against Tampa Bay, and they made some mistakes, and that really tilted the tide. What really tilted the tide, though, was the talent gap between these two teams. The Commanders just need more blue-chip players. The Eagles have a ton of blue-chip players. The Commanders have one in Jaden Daniels, but this was a real quick rebuild. If you remember back to the offseason, Adam Peters, who now runs the show for the Commanders, what they did, they took almost like a quantity over quality approach in free agency. They signed a ton of guys to like 2-year $10 million deals or 1-year $4 million deals, or, you know, fairly cheap short-term contracts. And they built up the bottom of the roster, and that really helped them. I mean, they had like legit depth. They don't have like top of the roster first tier players, and that's what they're going to be pursuing as they move forward. They also had a really nice draft, and everybody liked their draft, and I think that their draft really worked out well, and that's what really contributed to them getting here. But the Eagles, at the end of the day, I mean, Howie Roseman, over the last decade, I mean, he's been the best GM in the NFL. Certainly the smartest, not necessarily the most successful. Brett Veach has more Super Bowls, but I think in terms of roster building from top to bottom, getting Jalen Hurts in the second round, stealing Saquon Barkley this offseason, building up, putting such a great emphasis on the offensive and defensive lines. This offseason, nailing Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean at Philadelphia's biggest weakness on the entire roster. Howie Roseman, hats off to him again.
When they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, the Eagles, when they played the Chiefs, they had an almost completely different defense. He has completely rebuilt this defense in 2 years and turned it into one of the best units in the entire league. From the game perspective, I mean, I thought the big question for me was, can Jalen Hurts win with his arm? I thought he was really, really good as a thrower in this game. I mean, people had left him for dead. Even Eagles fans, a lot of people in Philly had left him for dead. Jalen Hurts goes out here and throws for 246 yards. That was his second most passing yards in a game since October 13th. He made some really good throws. That one in stride to Dallas Goedert up the left sideline. There was a 4th and 5 late in the second half where he threw a beautiful pass to A.J. Brown for like a 30-something yard gain. And so coming into the Super Bowl now, you're going to have a lot more confidence, or at least I think most people have a lot more confidence that Jalen Hurts can win as a thrower if they were to get behind. Other note that I had was the Dallas Goedert stuff. I mean, Dallas Goedert returned from his knee injury in week 18. Since then, Dallas Goedert has ran 83 routes. He's been targeted on 24 of them, 29%. I mean, for reference, that's in like Malik Neighbors' range in terms of his targets per route run. So Dallas Goedert's been a big part of it. And I was actually surprised. Some of these quick hitters that they ran, like, hey, let's get a quick hot route, a quick hot screen out. They went to Goedert in this game, which I thought was interesting. So yeah, Evan, any thoughts on Hurts' performance and the pass catchers heading into the Super Bowl?
Yeah, there was concern about Jalen Hurts from a health standpoint entering this game. And I mean, he didn't have a big rushing game. He did have 3 rushing touchdowns, but he didn't have a big rushing game from a yardage standpoint. But I thought that particularly throwing on the run, when he was moving forward, stepping up in the pocket, I thought he looked totally fine. The people covering the team said, I remember before the game during warmups that he looked totally fine. I thought he looked totally fine during the game itself. In the last two games where the Eagles have let him air it out a little bit, this one 28 pass attempts, and then that game that we talked about in Week 15 against the Steelers where he had 32 pass attempts, he's thrown the ball really, really well. And he talked about it actually after the game. They let him spread his wings a little bit, and he delivered.
Yeah.
So, and you're right about Dallas Goedert. I mean, Dallas Goedert has strung together now 4 really good games in a row, even dating back to that Tanner McKee game to close out the regular season. He's like really advanced into a big time weapon for them down the stretch. Devontae Smith created a ton of separation. His separation numbers, he only had 4 for 45, but his separation numbers were like off the charts when he was running routes. AJ Brown manhandled Marshawn Lattimore in more ways than one, and the Eagles were just, I mean, 7 rushing touchdowns. They got a monster run late from Will Shipley. I like that. Wait, what if something happens to Saquon Barkley in the Super Bowl? Like, can they maintain a running game? I think that they absolutely can with their offensive line. Also, big shout out to the interior linemen, Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson, both dealing with significant injuries. If you saw the video of Cam Jurgens walking in the locker room after the game, I mean, he is really struggling with that back. These 2 weeks to get ready are really going to help those guys. But those guys are tough as nails, Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson.
Yeah, I was going to say, there was some discussion we had before this game. Jalen Hurts seems banged up. Cam Jurgens is banged up. Should we dock their tush push rate? Should we dock Jalen Hurts' sneak rate? Should we dock his 1-yard touchdown rate in projection? We were like, you know what? They've run the tush push with like Kenny Pickett. Like, they don't care. And so even though Hurts was a little bit banged up, even though they lost Dickerson in the game, even though Cam Jurgens was very banged up, they kept running the tush push over and over again. I think that's an important note just going forward in fantasy, period. The Marshawn Lattimore thing, man, this guy, maybe it's him. I tell people all the time, whenever they're always like bitching about everybody around them, this guy, I don't like this guy. Maybe it's you, man, because Marshawn Lattimore fights with Mike Evans, and now he fights with A.J. Brown. Also, just an absolute mess. And yeah, on the Goddard stuff, we haven't bet any props yet for the Super Bowl because we're still working on projections. But I saw someone tweet Dallas Goedert over 48.5 receiving yards is the most bet Super Bowl player prop at MGM so far by total wagers. Obviously, MGM is a bit of a square book, and so everybody is already piling in to the Dallas Goedert overs here as we get set for the Super Bowl. Anyways, Eagles will move on to a Super Bowl rematch against the Chiefs. We'll talk about that when we get to the Chiefs. Commanders. So Evan kind of already mentioned what I was going to say about the Commanders. Roster talent is not even close. I mean, you could argue that Jaden Daniels is better than Jalen Hurts, but at just about every spot, the Commanders were overmatched on raw talent. And so when you combine that with turning the ball over 4 times, you're just absolutely drawing dead to win. Now, Commanders should be very, very optimistic going forward. Jaden is on the rookie contract. His cap hits the next 3 years are $8 million, $10 million, and $12 million. That's like literally nothing. You need to have hits in the draft. You need to have hits in free agency. You have the 3rd most cap space in 2025. But God, this is just such a good and fun spot to be the GM. And I don't like study the GMs enough to know, but Adam Peters strikes me as someone who's very competent, youngish guy, seems to get it. So yeah, any more final thoughts to close the Commanders season here, Evan?
I just wanted to apologize to the people. I was very bullish on Austin Eckler, over 25 receiving yards. The dude had 5 catches, but he also lost that fumble. He had 17 yards. I mean, we can't get 25 yards out of 5 catches. That was pretty disappointing. He really looked good in the previous game too, but I need to apologize to the people, leading them astray. That is never something that I want to do. And if it makes you feel any better, I also lost money on that.
Well, yeah. One thing that I'd say about the talent gap between the Eagles and Commanders, Eagles talent gap to like everyone is massive. I mean, the Eagles have such an outrageous roster everywhere, both lines, wide receiver play, just even cornerback play this year has been awesome for them. So it's not like a huge shot at the Commanders to say hardly any of their guys could even start for the Eagles, because that's the case for a lot of teams. And honestly, like, Eagles have more talent than the Chiefs, period. And like I said, we'll get to that in a second. Oh, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention Zach Ertz, man. We talked about him a ton last week on both Tuesday and Friday. Incredible game here. 11 catches, 104 yards on 16 targets at 34 years old. Zach Ertz played this year on a 1-year, $3 million deal. He's obviously said he wants to keep playing. Looks like he can keep playing. Obviously, he's going to want more than 1 year and $3 million. But yeah, just impressive from Zach Ertz here in this game. Kind of broke the slate in DFS also. All right. Let's go to the AFC, Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know what you thought, Evan. I know a lot of Bills fans were like, man, it was so close. It could have gone either way. It just felt inevitable to me that the Chiefs were going to win this game. Bills were down defenders. Mahomes, of course, made roughly 0 mistakes. Chiefs played good red zone defense. Mahomes gets the ball back with like 6 minutes left in the game. Of course, he goes down and kicks a field goal. They end up winning by 3, and now the Chiefs are back in the Super Bowl for the 5th time in the last 6 years. Evan, what did you think of Chiefs' performance against the Bills in the AFC Championship?
Yeah, it just started to feel inevitable to me, and we talk about this a lot on the Friday show with Wiggins. It just started to feel inevitable to me that the Chiefs were going to go back to the Super Bowl and quite possibly win it about 3 weeks ago when they started to get a bunch of dudes back. Jalen Watson, their number 2 cornerback. Xavier Worthy got rolling. They got back Hollywood Brown. They figured out their left tackle situation. They just stick Joe Thuney, a career left guard, at left tackle, and they've got that figured out now. So they just, they're a really smart team. They're so well coached. They had a significant on-field coaching advantage in this game on both sides of the ball. Spagnuolo was obviously in his bag. It just felt inevitable, even as someone who bet way back in June on the Bills and was hoping that the Bills could pull this off and was optimistic until the last drive that was still a possibility, and it was a possibility. But I'm with you. It just started to feel inevitable really weeks ago that this was going to be another Chiefs year.
Yeah, you mentioned the Xavier Worthy stuff, and we had a pretty big projection on Xavier Worthy, which ended up paying off. He's just, even though he hasn't been like outrageously productive, he's running so many routes, and his targets, I mean, all the first read stuff, all of kind of the jet sweep stuff, all the quick hitters have gone to Xavier Worthy. Patrick Mahomes has dropped back 67 times in these playoffs. Wide receiver routes run, Xavier Worthy leads the way with 59, Marquise Brown 49, Juju Smith-Schuster 35, DeAndre Hopkins 24. Again, Juju Smith-Schuster completely dominated DeAndre Hopkins in routes in this game. I don't know what you think about this DeAndre Hopkins stuff right now, Evan. It just seems like the Chiefs have decided he is their 4th best wide receiver behind Juju Smith-Schuster, behind Marquise Brown. I mean, you guys know me. I'm all about the age model, but this has been a rapid descent, I would say, for DeAndre Hopkins. Any more thoughts on him or Chiefs pass catchers?
I think that they just really value the speed that Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy bring to the table. They've already got one guy who's slow, crafty but slow, and Travis Kelce out there. DeAndre Hopkins has never been a speed merchant, even when he was coming out of college. And I think that they just really want that speed out there. Not that Juju Smith-Schuster is particularly speedy, but I mean, he's another number 3/4 receiver, rotational guy who did make some plays in this game. But I just think that they value the speed, and I totally get it with a guy with the kind of arm that Patrick Mahomes has.
Yeah, it feels like it's just over for DeAndre Hopkins at this point. You mentioned Travis Kelce. He was really quiet in this game, and we talked a bunch about the playoff Kelce stuff. I thought he would play well again here. He did not. Only 2 catches, 19 yards, 0 touchdowns on 4 targets. It was not a usage issue. Travis Kelce ran 31 routes on Patrick Mahomes' 35 dropbacks. You notice anything in this game, Evan, that would have made you think, hey, Kelce wasn't going to perform here, or any thoughts on Kelce's kind of dud?
Not particularly. I mean, like Patrick Mahomes played really, really well on the field. He did not have like a really big box score game except from as a rusher. But I mean, he had, he threw for 245 yards. He had 18 completions. Xavier Worthy had 85 yards, and nobody else had more than 60. So, it wasn't like if Patrick Mahomes had thrown for 340 yards in this game, then Travis Kelce probably would have gotten where everybody wanted him, but he did not.
Last note for me on Kansas
And
City
the
is
Chiefs really ran the ball
yeah.
well, consistently down and down. Kareem Hunt looks really good. I mean, he is clearly past Isaiah Pacheco as the Chiefs' preferred option at tailback.
That's what I was going to say, because there was a lot of speculation leading up to this game, and I speculated about it. A bunch of reporters did, that this would be Kareem Hunt would actually start, and Kareem Hunt would be way ahead here. We probably didn't get them far enough apart in projection leading up to this game. We were probably zoomed out too much. But like Evan said, it seems like they massively prefer Kareem Hunt right now. And these guys, again, that come off the broken leg, it has not been good for them. Tony Pollard, Tank Dell, Cooper Kupp, to some degree. All these guys have struggled, and now Pacheco struggling also in this game. Kareem Hunt played 38 snaps, Pacheco just 19. Kareem Hunt got 18 opportunities, Pacheco just 7. And of course, as we discussed last week, red zone role clearly belongs to Kareem Hunt. So I see no reason that will change in the Super Bowl. I expect Kareem Hunt to be the feature back here against the Eagles also. Okay, Super Bowl. Clearly, Eagles have more talent, right? Chiefs have Mahomes. Now, I do think Chiefs have obviously way more overall talent on their roster than the Commanders did, but Eagles definitely have more talent. When these teams met in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, it was very different teams, but the Chiefs won a wild one, 38-35. Just my initial thought is just like, Chiefs are going to play very well. We know that. If the Eagles play their best, they probably win, but I just don't feel as confident that the Eagles will play their best as the Chiefs will play their best. So that's kind of what you get. I don't know if you looked at the line yet, Evan. I'm sure you have. But yeah, any early thoughts on Super Bowl Eagles Chiefs?
I just know that as soon as it came out, it was 1.5 in favor of the Chiefs.
Still is, yes.
Okay. So
do you have a guess at the total?
Dude, I mean, this is getting to be such a high pressure situation. I thought about cheating this morning. I was at the diner eating some scrambled eggs, and I thought about cheating. I was like, I can't cheat. So I did not look, I promise. But I admit that I did think about it.
Okay. So what do you think? So what do you think the total is in Super Bowl? It's Chiefs are favored. Chiefs are favored by 1.5.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess 48.5.
Good guess. 49.5 right now. So yeah. Yeah. Any more thoughts on how these teams match up, or any early leans for you? Obviously, we're going to talk a ton more about the Super Bowl over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I have not started writing my matchup at all. I will do that probably this weekend. I'm going to take my kid to Marquette to go watch Marquette UConn and play basketball, I think, on Saturday. And then I'll come back and probably write it Sunday, Monday, and I'll have a ton of props. I don't know. I'm expecting a close game. I think that this is, again, a battle between teams that deserve to be here 100%. And I think it could go either way. It's just, God, it's like impossible to really take a confident stance against the Chiefs at this point.
Well, if you ask the internet, it's totally rigged. The game has already been decided.
Right.
The Chiefs
and the refs, right?
The Chiefs and the refs have already won the game because it's rigged for Mahomes. Yeah. Oh, for people interested in props, obviously we have our official props subscription, but beyond that, we'll also have a show next week where we'll talk about some props that we like, and then we'll also do the thing we do every year for fun, where we give everyone on staff, which is getting to be a quite large number here at ETR, but we'll give everyone on staff to write down their favorite Super Bowl prop, and we'll publish that as an article also. So stay tuned for that stuff. Always good fun with the Super Bowl props. All right. Last thing to get to is the Bills, man. I almost like feel bad. I don't know if you saw Josh Allen's press conference after the game. Like, he looked like he was going to cry. I mean, now the bottom line, yeah, the spot on Josh Allen's 4th and inches sneak was probably bad. The Kincaid drop on that prayer at the end was probably bad. The Christian Benford situation, it didn't help for sure. But the bottom line is Josh Allen is now 0-4 against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Evan, what did you think of Bill's performance in yet another heartbreaking playoff loss to the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm glad that you bring up the Christian Benford situation. Not that that was, necessarily, cause for the 3-point difference in the game, but that was just that's a deflating situation because you were already without Taylor Rapp. You had gotten Benford through the concussion protocol, and he had missed practice on Friday due to the personal matter, but he's in there. That's got to make you feel good. And then all of a sudden he goes out right away with another concussion.
Yeah.
So that is just a really deflating situation because also you haven't been great against the run all year, and now you're depleted in the secondary. And the Chiefs hadn't scored 30 points in any game the entire season, and now they put up, 32 on you. And they really didn't have a whole lot of, obstacles in their way in the passing game. They ran the ball well, as we discussed, as teams are wont to do against Buffalo. So your defense just wasn't where you wanted it to be. And in these 4 losses to the Chiefs in the playoffs, the Bills have scored 28 points per game, but their defense has just not delivered. And I don't think Josh Allen had the greatest game. He got away with some turnover-worthy plays, and it wasn't his best game overall. But I definitely don't think that the offense as a unit was the reason that the Bills lost. I think it was on the defense. James Cook was great. By the way, James Cook, he went up with 20 touchdowns combined over the course of the year.
Yeah.
Running backs don't always come out of college and improve. They're often they've hit their ceiling already. They're expected to produce right away. I think that James Cook, through 3 seasons, he's improved as much as any running back in the league during that span, and he was a big-time player. I think they didn't get him the ball enough.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because a lot of people are saying, and the play that stuck out to me was, I believe it was their last drive. They come out of a timeout, and it's Ty Johnson in there. And I'm like, all right, well, maybe they're just going to throw the ball and they want Ty. It's a pitch on 1st and 10 to Ty Johnson and loses 5 yards. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and nitpick play calling. I don't think that's why they lost. But, man, a lot of people are out there saying, why did we not see more James Cook? And it sounds like Evan agrees there. It's just they have been so staunch that Ty Johnson is going to be their 3rd down back, going to be their 2-minute and 4-minute back, no matter what. And I don't know that that's the right policy to have, but I'd love to see more James Cook next season.
Especially because James Cook is good in the passing game as well. He was good in the passing game in this game. He had, 3 for 49 on 3 targets in the receiving game. In the previous 2 playoff games, he had 23 touches and 20 touches. He only had 16 here, and he was balling.
Yeah.
So I think that was a mistake on the Bills on behalf of the Bills coaching staff.
The other big thing that I had on the Bills was you tried to make a move to get Amari Cooper. You knew you needed something more in weaponry. It just turned out that Amari Cooper was never really a hit for them, and Dalton Kincaid was apparently playing through a knee injury. He was never a hit for them either all season, and so you're stuck with Khalil Shakir, who's a very poor man's Amon-Ra St. Brown, catching these really short passes and trying to do it all. They didn't get a hit from Keon Coleman either. So I feel like Josh Allen needs more weaponry. I know I said this last year, and I was like, well, they got Keon Coleman. At least they did something. They went and got Amari Cooper. At least they did something. But it wasn't even enough. I mean, I kind of think they need even more weapons. Evan, any priorities for you this offseason if the Bills are going to get over the hump?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you just built the best case, that you can for Josh Allen to win MVP. And when do we find out about this? I mean,
the 6th of February. It's been a long time. Yes.
Goodness gracious. We still got to wait another 9 days to figure that. All right. But I mean, you just built, you made a really strong case for Josh Allen to be the regular season MVP. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I mean, these are still young guys that have room to grow. Khalil Shakir is he'll be entering his 3rd year. Amari Cooper will be a free agent, I believe.
Yeah.
Keon Coleman 2nd year, Dalton Kincaid 3rd year. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but I mean, if they don't bring back Amari Cooper, then I think that they should go out and get an alternative veteran number 1 type receiver.
Yeah.
That would be nice for Josh Allen to be able to lean on.
It's just, for me on Amari Cooper, it's if they thought he had a lot of gas left in the tank, they should have been playing him more, and maybe they think he's not. But when you have Mac Hollins and Keon Coleman out there and Curtis Samuel. It's like, God, I'd love to see more Amari Cooper routes, but maybe they think he doesn't have that much left in the tank. So that'll be an interesting one to follow for sure. All right. That is going to do it for the final team by team show of the season. As I said at the top, really, really appreciate all you guys checking in on this show every week, whether it be on YouTube, where producer Ryan did great graphics for it all year, or on the audio side, where I know people like to listen when they're walking their dog or driving to work or whatever. Hopefully you guys got some value out of this show. We love doing it. For Evan, for producer Luke, producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.